Let's just touching back on one more time, because I don't imagine, to be honest with you, that we're going to talk too much more about Kamala Harris.
How dare you?
After today, I mean, honestly, like I from my perspective, it cuts both ways, because I don't know who Joe Biden could have picked that would have been. Well, there's two things. One, I think that Elizabeth Warren would have been better, because just from the resources that would flow out of her office would go to people that I'm more inclined to be interested with. She would have more influence on his taxation policy and his antitrust policies, and I believe would have been a net positive in that respect.
As a representative of tankies for Kamala, I suggest you tread lightly.
Well, but with that said, after that, like, I'm not 100% sure, and maybe Bass would have been better, but I don't really know. But I also but I think from an electoral standpoint, I think she's as good as anybody. I think every VP would have come in with some liability on a electoral standpoint, but I mean, I don't think it's going to make a difference. And then the question is, like, how formidable will she be if she's the president in 2024, or if she's running for president in 2024? I mean, I think it's not out of the realm of possibility. I mean, in many respects, Joe Biden has made it clear this is a caretaker presidency. And who he is caretaking the presidency for is really the question, right? And I don't know. My critique of Kamala Harris is that I cannot tell you why she is a politician. I can tell you that with a lot of politicians that I don't like and politicians that I do like. I cannot tell you, like, what is her signature issue. I think that she was a prosecutor who did stuff that I think was highly problematic at best. And I think she did that because it was politically expedient. And I think when she came out and said, I'm for Medicare for all in the race, I think it was political expedience. I don't know. Like, I don't even know what her proposal was. I don't know what her signature issue. I can tell you what Cory Booker's is. I can tell you who I'm not a particular fan of. I can tell you what Elizabeth Warren's is. I can tell you even Pete Buttigieg is as sort of, as abstract and ambient as it is. Well, I guess he has the same problem, but like, I'm not 100% sure what Kamala Harris is.
She was kind of flailing at the end of her campaign, right? She had the Pell Grant thing that was like, pretty technocratic and, not well received. And then her closing argument was, let's get Trump off Twitter, right?
Yeah, and when she went after Joe Biden,
I forgot about that.
When she went after Joe Biden, she started down a path where she could have made I think a very substantive critique, and then just sort of abandoned it. And so, in terms of from a left perspective, like I say, electorally, I think she's going to be fine in that position, and that is hugely important. Get rid of Donald Trump. I think any of them would have been more or less fine electorally. The question is that in terms of the left, I don't think you're going to see that many resources come, to the left through her office. That's for sure. But in terms of the left, how formidable will she be when she is running in 2024? And that, I feel like, I don't know, to the extent one can project out there, I don't know that she's going to be that formidable. I think there's going to be room for a challenge, assuming that she is running for the presidency. We don't really have, at least in modern times, a good model for what that looks like if there's a one-term presidency and their vice president runs for election in 2024. We don't really have a model for that. So,
I mean, at the same time, I don't think she has a signature issue beyond being a Yas queen that all the kind of liberal wine moms are really into. But like, neither does Joe Biden, right? Like, most people can't name his signature issue or really any policies of his. And
I agree. No, I agree.
The primary, so.
But I don't think. I mean, that's my point. Is it because his politics? He was largely devoid of politics, I think, in many respects. I mean, he was very transactional for like the health and the credit card industry, and his record on criminal justice, not good. But I think again that was just about expediency. But I don't think he's going to be a two-term president. And I think but she does extend that brand of Joe Biden's, I think is maybe your point on some level. Like she is almost, I've described the Joe Biden presidency as like the king who's on the bed with consumption and everybody's standing around, in the court, just waiting, like, am I going to be the one who gets the power? And I think on some level, she is like, she's not clearly on the other side of the bed there. You know what I mean? Like she's not, I don't get the sense that she's that, the most formidable, like an Amy Klobuchar, I feel like would like be locking stuff up on some level. But,
well, her people are vicious though. Like they really go for the jugular, and it worked in this case. I don't know. I mean, it could be a good thing maybe that her politics seem so flexible based on what she thinks will make her popular at any given point in time. Maybe that's the point of pressure we could put on her. Like, I don't think she would have ever given an answer like, I will veto Medicare for all, even if it passes through Congress. Like, she just wouldn't do that. It does seem a little bit tone deaf that they chose a prosecutor amidst a historic uprising against the police at a time when not just reforming, but defunding and even abolishing the police is part of the national conversation. But again, I don't know how much overlap that movement actually has with the people who are going to vote for Biden Harris.
Well, I think that
sure.
I think what you just pointed out is actually one of the things that ended up falling in her favor. Here is why. Look at this clip of her on The View. We perceive her, and even in the statement that the Trump people put out, she was a tough prosecutor, but she's so phony. She's just abandoned all that. Here is Kamala Harris on The View. I don't know when this was. A couple of months, maybe a month ago, I think.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
And
during the Floyd
this
stuff.
This is what I would imagine that when they were sitting in Joe Biden's area, to the extent that they were doing any strategizing like this, as opposed to like, I like her, and so I want her to be VP, and I don't like her, I want somebody else to be VP. But to the extent that they were like sort of looking at like because remember, Joe Biden's campaign is all the prevent defense, essentially, right? It's just like, how can we be so perfectly smooth that nothing can stick to us? And
real smooth brain.
And they go at Joe Biden for being weak on policing. She's a prosecutor. And then on the left, it's like, but she's a prosecutor. And then I give you this.
Activists right now are calling for a defunding of the police. The Minneapolis City Council just agreed on a bill on this. Right before I came to tape the show, there was a clip on CNN from a Minneapolis City Councilwoman who said, quote, "It's a place of privilege if someone breaking into your home wants to call the police." This is gaining a lot of steam. Nancy Pelosi this morning just refused to answer if she would support defunding the police. I just want to know from you, do you support defunding and removing police from American communities? And if not, why do you think there's such a hard time being differentiated right now between defunding and reforming police departments?
So, Megan, I think that a big part of this conversation really is about reimagining how we do public safety in America, which I support, which is this. We have confused the idea that to achieve safety, you put more cops on the street, instead of understanding to achieve safe and healthy communities, you put more resources into the public education system of those communities, into affordable housing, into home ownership, into access to capital for small businesses, access to health care regardless of how much money people have. That's how you achieve safe and healthy communities. And so we really do need to understand and reimagine what and how we can actually make and help make communities safe. Because here's the bottom line. If you contrast, many communities which have a heavy presence of police to middle and upper middle class suburbs in America, you will not see that presence of police. But what you will see families who have an income that allows them to get through the end of the month. You will see good public schools. You will see people who have access to health care and can afford it. You will see people who have jobs. And so this has to be the conversation, which is how are we going to be smart in achieving what should be our collective goal, which is that all communities are safe, and knowing that safe communities are usually safe because they are healthy because of a number of things, including the economy, including education, including access to health care. And that's how I think about this. In many cities in America, over 1/3 of their city budget goes to police. So we have to have this conversation. What are we doing? What about the money going to social services? What about the money going to helping people with job training? What about helping with the mental health issues that communities are being plagued with, for which we're putting no resources? And here's the other thing. When I talk to law enforcement, they know that they don't want to be, nor are they skilled to be the ones who are responding to someone with mental illness or substance abuse or the homeless population. But in many cities, that's what's happening, because we are not directing those resources, those public resources, to where they need to go, which is addressing mental health, homelessness, substance abuse, so that we don't have to have a police response because we are smarter.
All right, that's good. I mean, like, that's not abolish the police force, but that is the, when Alex Vitale was on the program, like, talking about the interim thing, I mean, that's what he's describing, right? I mean, pretty close in those words. I mean, I don't know if she's going to do these things and whatnot, but put that aside for a moment.
She's describing part of what he was talking about, right? Which is investing more in various social services. The other part that is also important of what he's talking about is to shrink and defund police departments and reduce their contact with the public. She said that she doesn't want to put more cops on the streets, but she didn't really say that she wants to have less, as I understood the sort of rambling thing that she just said.
I don't know. I thought when she said, like, 1/3 of the city's budget is policing. When she's talking about proportion of a city's budget and then talks about reallocating that to other places, I think that's what she's saying.
Yeah, it almost kind of sounds like some defund talking points, for sure. Also, I want to point out that defunding is a reform within the system, but it is seen by many as a non-reformist reform that can be carried out within an abolitionist horizon.
Yes.
Oh, can I just comment on her being a
go ahead.
Her being a cop in general? I think it's like, I think it's good that people are talking about this. It doesn't bother me that Kellyanne Conway thinks it's some sort of thing, because I think two things can happen if she gets in office as vice president, because I expect unrest in the street to continue, because I don't think it's just a Donald Trump thing. I think we're going to, and I think it's going to be good to have her at least on notice that we know you are a cop, right? Like, we know, and our eyes on you with this. And I think, to speaking to the 2024 thing, that's going to impact her, because either she's going to be good on these issues and not egregious, which I hope that happens. And, maybe she'll be a stronger candidate then, but I expect she'll probably get some of the fall for certain crackdowns in certain areas of civil liberties. And because we all expect her to be a cop, and she won't be a problem in 2024.
And I think that in that moment where she says to Meghan McCain, I've spoken to law enforcement, there is a credibility that she has done that. Now, listen, I'm just talking about the analysis that the Biden people are doing. Like, it allows her to go out there and be Nixon to China. Now, whether she does that what Matt is saying is that we now have a dynamic where we're going to judge you on that paradigm. Are you going to be Nixon to China, or are you going to be or not? And that's going to put pressure on her, because I think the one thing I think that is clear about Kamala Harris is that she knows which way the wind is blowing. And I think that can be helpful, at least in terms of where the conversation starts in 2024. Yeah. And that may be the last time that we bring her up until the debate with Pence. Frankly, I mean, I just don't think there's many people voting for or against. The only other thing that I feel like needs to be said at this point is just, I think it would have been very difficult in this for two things for someone like Elizabeth Warren to be the nominee. One is that, there's really two different definitions of the base of the Democratic Party. One is sort of like, who is the electoral base, and doing, particularly in 2018, the electoral base, and who is the sort of ideological base. And from the electoral base of the party, she's that demo right there. She's right in the heart of that demo, and people want to vote for people who they feel will have some semblance of what their issue sets are.
I will say, though, she does not do super well with Black voters, which is an important part of the Democratic Party base.
That's true. That's true. I suspect that she's going to do better now that she's the nominee.
Yeah, Biden's got them. And Biden does well with them anyway.
Yeah, and I think, and then the other. So I think it would have been hard for Warren on that. I think it would have been hard, particularly in terms of I think Harris, the fact that she's a prosecutor. I think people on the left are a little bit offended that in this era of George Floyd that she would be picked. But I think from the Biden's perspective, that is an attribute, not that is a feature, not a bug.
Yeah, they've made it clear that the left is not a part of their electoral strategy.
And it's also good that the Mnuchin stuff she's on notice about that stuff too, because that's going to be a pretty big issue. I mean, going forward with evictions and sort of things.
People don't talk about that enough, I think, in terms of the Mnuchin. But I think Elizabeth Warren had one shot at this, and it was had she, and I said this at the time, had she endorsed Bernie, her biggest strength in this process was that she was ostensibly going to bring in the left and the youth vote and small dollar donations. And had she endorsed Bernie, and not because she owed it to her, I'm saying for her own, not just for her own self-interest, but for the interest of her having a deliverable for Joe Biden in the event that he became the nominee. That deliverable would have been a claim to the Bernie bros or folks or voters or whatever it is. And I would imagine that Sanders would have been compelled to push her more in that thing. And that's she, for whatever reason, thought that was not a smart move. At the time, I think it was a huge mistake. I understand why people say she doesn't owe Bernie anything, but I don't even, none of my calculations are like nobody owes anybody anything.
She owes it to herself.
I think it would have made her a much more valuable asset to the Biden campaign if she had claim to those voters. And she would have, I think, had she endorsed Bernie.
Oh, well, she's terrible at this, so no surprises there.
That was one of the two or three really big, I think, sort of just political mistakes that I think, exposed a weakness, I don't want to say a tin ear, but maybe a narrowness in vision in terms of where, what a politician who's doing retail politics needs to bring to the table.